So first, before we, Abby, before you go through that, I just want to welcome the two new members and introduce everybody. We have Nicole Giasanti and Bert Chenard. Nicole's a regular member, Bert's an alternate right now, and you guys can see Tim on here, Bleasdale, and Ken Petrini, and Karen, are you, oh, there you go, and Karen Barnett. So we have more members now than we've had probably in a long time. So that's good to fill the board. So go ahead, Abby.
Awesome. So thank you everybody for joining us for the April 12th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This is a web-based call, and so we're operating under the following procedures. This video, this web call is being audio and video recorded. A recording will be available within 24 hours and will be posted to our planning department website. To ensure good sound quality, the default rule for the meeting is that everyone remains on mute unless they're speaking. If an attendee creates an audio or visual disruption, the Zoom moderator may place them on mute or remove them from the meeting if the disruption continues. We will not be using the chat feature in this meeting. We appreciate your attendance, and should you have any questions about the process, you can call our staff at 860-444-5813 between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark for the official roll, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, this is the April 12th, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. For the roll, Greg Massett.
Here.
Tim Bleasdale.
Here.
And while we're doing roll, if we could just make sure that everybody is
Karen Barnett.
Here.
Ken Petrini.
Here.
Nicole Giasanti.
Here.
Bert Chenard.
Here.
Joe DeBono. Okay, we have a full slate of regular members.
Okay, so we have a full slate, so no appointment of alternate tonight. Item number 2, approval of the March 29th, 2022 meeting minutes. Any motion to approve those?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 22nd, 2022.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Ken, seconded by Karen to approve the March 29th, 2022 meeting minutes. All in favor?
Before we act on that, there is a change that.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, there's some housekeeping changes that need to be made to the minutes. That was. Was it the motion to advertise?
It was the second on the motion.
Gotcha. For item number 3, putting affordable to draft
Yes,
affordable housing
it
plan.
wasn't a second mention.
Gotcha. There was a motion on the draft affordable housing plan that was made by Greg to advertise the public hearing for the affordable housing plan scheduled for May 10th. There was a second, but the second did not appear on the minutes. That item was seconded. Who seconded that?
Ken.
Ken.
Okay.
That item was seconded by Ken. So we can approve the minutes with a modification that we add to that motion that it was seconded by Ken Petrini.
Okay, so Ken, is that your motion seconded, subject to that correction?
Yes, it is.
And seconded by Karen. All in favor of approval of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye. All right, 3-0. I forgot to welcome Tim back too. Sorry about that. We got the new members, but welcome Tim back to the panel. And hope everything is well with your family.
Thanks, Greg.
Number 3 is receipt of applications. What do we have, Abby?
So we have PL 22-2, which is the application of the Waterford Planning and Zoning Commission to amend section 20.4 of the Waterford zoning regulations for off-street parking. This one is set, this is the language that the commission previously reviewed and directed staff to submit formally. So that can go and be advertised for public hearing for the April 26th meeting.
Yes, correct.
The PL 22-3 request of William F. O'Donnell applicant to amend sections 3.19 of the Waterford zoning regulation, temporary forms of outdoor entertainment. That is being received and is under review currently. And staff will come back to the commission when we've had a chance to evaluate and talk about a potential public hearing date for that.
Okay, I think, didn't we talk about it a couple weeks ago too? When we received these, we wanted to get copies of them so we can at least look at them.
I believe you should have. had
Yeah,
those.
that's correct. The copies of the one for that Abby had just spoken about, the regulation amendment for the outdoor entertainment. There's a lot of changes that need to be made to the language before it becomes really acceptable for public hearing for that matter. So I had discussions today with the applicant's agent. He's going to make several changes to the language, and then at the appropriate time, it'll be scheduled for the public hearing. You'll be getting it, of course, when I get those revisions.
Okay, when we get those though in the future, we can get those on the agenda so that we can make sure that we get a little head start on them too. Even if they're rough, some of them might be very rough, and I think this one, from what I understand, is, but we should still get to see them, get a little bit more time and look at them.
Sure.
Okay, so that's it for the receiving of, oh no, we have one more, right?
One more, PL 22-4, application of the Waterford Planning and Zoning Commission to amend the Waterford zoning regulations, section 1 definitions and section 3.44 temporary outdoor dining. Again, this is language that the commission has previously discussed under administrative items in previous agendas and directed staff to put the formal application in. This can also come for public hearing on the 26th.
Okay, so those number 2 and 4 are public hearing on the April 26th, right?
Correct.
Okay, great. Item number 4 is application review of PL 22-1, request of Waterford Woods LLC, owner and applicant for modified site plan approval for multifamily development at 384 and 394 Willits Avenue Extension, C-MF zone, in accordance with section 22 of the zoning regulations and as shown on plans entitled Waterford Woods Phase 2 Site Development Plans, action required by 511. We have Mr. Hanfield, but you said you're not going to be presenting. It's going to be Mr. Balskis.
No, I'll be presenting as well as Joe Balskis and John Wicko, our project architect. So.
Okay, so it's yours now, Brandon. Mr. Hanfield.
Okay. Thank you very much for having us. Again, for the record, my name is Brandon Hanfield, professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut with Yantic River Consultants. With me this evening on the call is John Wicko, our project architect, as well as Joseph Balskis with VHB, our traffic engineer. We're here tonight to discuss the phase 2 site modifications. So it's our third time in front of this commission. Phase 1 was approved back in March of 2021. Phase 1A, or the clubhouse, was approved in December, and here we are for phase 2. Which adds some additional multifamily units. So I'll spend a little time going through the changes to the site plan and how we accommodated the new regulations as well as the addition of the units. And then I'll hand it over to Joe to talk about traffic and John to talk about the buildings. And if you have any questions at any time, feel free to jump in. So I will share my screen. All right, so what you have in front of you is your title sheet of the plan set, just in color with the aerial, the 2019 aerial underneath. And just a quick orientation, our property is shown in orange, outlined in orange. It's 26.64 acres. To the left of the page is north, where you'll find Willits Avenue Extension. To the northwest is the intersection of Willits Ave with Boston Post Road, or Route 1. It's about 500 feet from our site. To the east or northeast would be Willits Avenue heading into New London, about 2,000 feet or a half mile away. And at the right side of your page is south. That would be the railroad corridor. And then just off the page would be Myrock Avenue. So Just a quick orientation, brief history on where we stand. We're here for phase 2. What I did is I tried to highlight the colors or color the plan so that you can see the differences in phase 1 and phase 2 and what we're here to discuss. So pretty common throughout the plans. In green, you'll see the buildings and edge of roads that were approved as part of phase 1. So building A, building B, building C, those were all approved as part of the March 2021 approval, as well as the main driveway and parking for those units. Also shown in green is the clubhouse that's on the south side of the site. That was approved as part of a site modification in December. It is technically part of phase 1. And then what you see in orange, and we'll get into the detail of that, all of the elements or items in orange are proposed as part of phase 2. So real quick, as you drive onto the site, you'll see building D, which is a new multifamily apartment. As you drive to the back of the site, past the clubhouse, you'll see building E and building F. Again, new apartment buildings. Other amenities on site that we're adding are garages. So to provide a certain percent of the parking spaces for the residents within an enclosure, and then a new mail center to accommodate a larger development. So that mail center will be at the north end of the site immediately as you drive in. I will head to, and I apologize, it might be a bit slow changing pages. It is a big file. So this is your sheet 2, again, just with color, no changes from what you've reviewed already. And you'll see the phase 1 buildings in green. So building A, B, C, again, north is left and the clubhouse is at the rear of the site. A couple quick things on the existing site before we get into the plan. What you see here in red, so kind of a hatched red area here, that is part of the zone A, which is a FEMA zone, a special flood hazard district that's on the property. Part of our application deals with that zone A. And just to give a sense of where that is, everything from about this line to the south and west is within zone A technically. What we've done since our last meeting in December is we received approval or authorization from FEMA for a letter of map amendment, which removes a portion of zone A from the mapped special flood hazard area. So everything within this red hatched area has been removed by meets and bounds from zone A. So we no longer have any buildings or parking areas proposed within zone A as part of phase 2, and that is part of the mechanics that allowed us to be in front of you this evening. So if you have any questions about the FEMA line or the technical studies that we did to or submitted to FEMA as part of that, I'm happy to discuss it. But for the intents of this mapping, anything in red is no longer in zone A. All right, so the site plan itself. So we have the same common access driveway to Willits Avenue Extension at the northeast corner of our property here. The dimensions of that driveway are the same as was originally approved in 2021. But we did make one minor change, and I'll get into the details of that later. But what we did is we added a left out and a right out designated lane. And that allows us to have some queuing capacity at the intersection with Willits Avenue. And part of that conversation will come when Joe Balskis is up to talk about traffic and our analysis of that. But we did, within the confines of the original approved pavement, provide a second lane and narrowed up the entrance. But the main access is the same. As you make your way onto the site, the first buildings you see on your right side, or on your, I guess would be the west side of your drive, would be building D. Building D is the same as building A and building B. So it'll be 34 units in 3 stories with a sub-level basement apartment units as well. So it would be called a 3.5 or 3/4 split. But again, the same building as A and B. Also on your right side as you enter the site would be the new mail center, which John Wicko will talk about later, but it provides a suitable enclosure for not just regular USPS deliveries and mailboxes, but also a parcel room for the residents, so that when they get notified when a package is delivered and they have a secure location to pick it up. Another improvement you'll see at the front of the site would be a garage G4A, and that has 4 garage units as well as parking in front. And those will be allocated to whatever resident leases that garage. As we make our way back in the site, not much has changed for buildings A, B, and C, or actually nothing's changed for the buildings. But what we did do in this middle portion is we reconfigured all of the parking to comply with your current standards. So I think in December of 2021, you adopted smaller parking spaces of 9 by 18. You adopted lesser parking spaces for 2-bedroom units. So instead of 2 per unit, you have 1.5. And then also sidewalks went from 6 feet along parking to 5 feet wide. So as part of this site plan revision, we did go through and reconfigure all of the parking and sidewalks near buildings A, B, and C to comply with current regulations. And what that did is it really substantially reduced the impervious surfaces that were associated with the original development. And we'll cover that on a higher scale plan. As we get to the back, the only new change here by building C is a garage G4. That's another 4-unit garage that will be in proximity of buildings B and C. We cross over through the saddle and the wetlands. We drive past the clubhouse. No substantial changes to the clubhouse. Again, we did reconfigure the parking and sidewalks to comply with your current regulations. And then we get to the rear of the site where you'll see 2 G5 garage structures, or 10 total garages, and then buildings E and F. Those buildings have 36 units apiece. They are 3 stories, slightly different structure than what you see out front, and it's more characteristic of the feel as you get past the clubhouse into this area here, which more mature vegetation. And I think it's called the preserve back there. So the buildings were designed to kind of meet that. Let's see here. What I'll do is I will go to your sheet 3. And before getting here, I will say the addition of buildings D, E, and F add 106 units to our site total, bringing us from 98 to 204. And that does comply with the maximum density requirements of the zone. So I think we have 7.6 units per acre, which is less than the 8. All right, so now at a higher scale, I'll quickly touch on the reconfigured entrance. So what you see here is the same inbound lane, left and right turn from Willits Avenue. And as you see in the outbound lane, we increased the width from 16 feet to 20 feet. And that allowed us to get a designated right turn and a designated left turn with suitable queuing distances for over 5 cars in each lane. So this will prevent, if it does take a few extra seconds for somebody turning left onto Willits Avenue due to traffic coming out of New London, there will be adequate space for people to go turn right and not have a very long queue on our site. Other than that, the central island, and you can see, if I zoom in, you can see the original limits of the island in green, and you can see the new island in black. As we make our way to building D, you can see the first intersection is exactly the same as was approved. The driveway location is as was originally approved. And what we did is we put parking off of that approved driveway that will serve building D. The garage we added in where there was parking, so it's in the same configuration. And the mail center still has handicapped accessible parking in front of it. I'm gonna try to get back here. All right, so the only other minor change on this sheet would be related to the dumpster enclosure or the trash enclosure. What we did is we went back through and spoke with the service contractor for that, and we were able to reduce the size of the trash enclosure. So it is slightly narrower and slightly less deep, still suitable to have plenty of roll-offs for recycling and trash. And part of this is because we added a trash enclosure for buildings E and F. So now there are 2 areas for the residents that are satellite located. Last change on this plan would be recreation. The original approval had a very long recreation area that went from about the midpoint of building A all the way out behind this adjacent property here. Part of the reason for that was we could not have any recreation in the front yard, which was defined as anything between the first building and the street. Since then, the regulation's been slightly changed, and now our recreation is between two buildings. So everything between building D and building A will be recreation space, including grill pad, relaxation areas, and this is a relatively flat graded area for outdoor gathering. Not a whole lot of changes between A, B, and C. Again, what you can see in green are the limits, former limits of pavement that would have been associated with parking. So you can see we're able to really shorten up the parking bays and have the same amount of parking within a much lesser footprint of impervious. So that applies basically all the way around the site. I will say we did add a garage for C, which we already talked about, and that garage was placed on parking areas already. So no substantial change to the plan there. And the biggest change to the plan would be associated with buildings E and building F, as well as the garages. You can see the approved cul-de-sac underneath here in green. So what we did is we extended our driveway network and parking network off of that approved cul-de-sac to serve these two buildings with adequate parking. We added a trash enclosure specifically for the clubhouse in these two buildings. So this site complies on its own for parking standards. And so we treat it as an independent to make sure there's suitable parking without people having to walk from the building C area. Last thing I'll mention before changing, one thing we did do is we connected the sidewalk network at building C to the sidewalk network at the clubhouse. So what you have now is a sidewalk that parallels the east side of the access drive here and allows people to get or walk continuously without getting in the road from the north side to the south side of the site and access the amenity. One last thing to note, during the design review board, the only comment we received that was a condition or request was that we add some crosswalks for this area here. So a painted crosswalk and a painted crosswalk here. Both of those things we can easily do, so no problem. All right, I won't spend a whole lot of time on utilities and drainage. Most of the site has not and will not change from what you originally approved. So most of the grading and drainage was installed and can accommodate the improvements without major infrastructure changes. The drainage was able to accommodate it in front of building D. The stormwater system behind building A is adequate to accommodate the drainage increased impervious from building D. And then the stormwater system adjacent to building C, same thing, suitable size to accommodate the increase in impervious. One thing to note is part of the reason for that is the deduction in impervious from parking areas and sidewalks. As we get out to the back at the clubhouse, this system, the two detention basins are as was originally approved. We did add 2 infiltration networks to provide treatment of the building F and building E parking and building areas. So there'll be treatment and infiltration before discharge there. All in all, our plan has no net increase in peak runoff, and we adequately treat the water quality, flow, and volume in accordance with the DEP guidelines. Last 3 sheets are erosion and sedimentation control plan. Again, I won't spend a whole lot of time. Our plan does meet the 2002 guidelines, and we are operating under a construction stormwater permit from the DEP actively, and that will continue to be for the phase 2 improvements. And not last but least, landscaping. We basically continued our existing program from phase 1 and the clubhouse into building D, building E, and building F. So you'll see a lot of the same foundation plantings and island plantings that we incorporated. Most of the street trees and shade trees were already in place as part of our approval. So we have a network of street trees that parallel a road. What we did do is during construction, we were able to preserve a lot of the existing mature trees on the north end of the site. And so what we did is we did not cut them down, and we are planning on preserving them and cleaning up between them and leaving it as a natural area. Same here at the north end behind the abutter. So all of these trees were maintained. They will continue to be cleaned up underneath. There's a substantial amount of debris underneath them. And what we're going to do is supplement those existing trees with some screening vegetation. So these are all green giant arborvitaes. They'll be planted on the south side of that existing vegetation. They'll go through a light spot on the understory and wrap around the east end of the abutter. What that'll do is provide screening to building D, the garage, and the mail center, not only from the abutting property, but as well as Willits Avenue extension. So when you're driving by the view of the site, in general, you won't be able to see parking or headlights associated with the development. You may be able to see the top of building D. All in all, the rest of the vegetation is the same. As part of the entrance, we did reduce the width of that island and reduce some plantings, but pretty much the same as originally approved. No substantial changes for A, B, and C. And too far. And last but not least, as we get back past the clubhouse, slightly different approach back here. As we cross into the back, the trees around the perimeter of our site and in the wetlands get a little more mature, a little less historical land use, although there was a substantial quarrying activity back here. It's not quite as disturbed as the front was. So the approach back here was to preserve as much as we possibly could. So around the Rocky Mound, you'll remember the conversation in the clubhouse. We preserved the large trees that are around that feature. Around the perimeter of the site, we're preserving as much as possible and leaving at least 50 feet, if not 75, to the wetlands. And the same goes around the south side of our site as well. We're just trying to keep as many of those big trees as we can to create a real private space back there. Internally, rather than plant a lot of shade and color trees, we elected to incorporate more of flowering trees that'll add some color, seasonal spring color and summer color. And then in the fall, it'll be a pretty fantastic show when the leaves start to change. In terms of recreation, so the recreation space for building E and F will be to the west of building F behind it. It will be a linear connection all the way around building E, where they'll each have their own grill pad and gathering area. And then that linear connection continues, and this is the gray line here, all the way around and connects to the clubhouse. So they have direct access to the dog park that was approved, as well as the amenities within the clubhouse. And the last slide I'll share for now before answering questions or changing over is our lighting plan. We continue with the same lights. So these are Cooper pole mounted area lights, 16 feet high. They're white. And we extended our lighting diagram to show the addition of building D here. So you can see the additional lighting within front of building D. We extended lighting up to accommodate the parking for the bottom of building D. And then as you get out back here, we extended the lighting to the parking and driveway areas for building E and F. Our lighting in general, it blacks out before it gets to property lines or into the wetlands. And that was intentional by the lights that we picked so we can focus on areas we want it and keep it from encroaching onto other areas. All right. Any questions before I turn it over to Joe Balskis, or I'm happy to answer them later. Either one works for me.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Hanfield?
I have one question.
Okay.
The added garage is next to the original trash area. Will there be any impact on the traffic there that you've noticed or you're planning for? It's not two-way, right? It used to be one-way.
Karen, I don't know. Is anybody else having a trouble hearing Karen? Yeah, we're all having trouble. It's not coming through very clear, Karen.
Oh, let me try again. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that seems to be better. Yep.
The trash area, it used to be one way, right? And now it's two way, and there are garages there as well.
So the driveway here in front of Building D was always
Yep.
two
Oh, okay.
to the trash
Are
enclosure.
you anticipating kind of traffic flow issues with having the garages right next to the trash?
I don't. So the garages will be controlled by certain residents. And what we did there, unlike the other garages, we had parking spaces in front of that unit. So they have plenty of space to park, get in their garage. They can even tandem park 2 cars, which we account for, all outside of that 2 lanes. So that any refuse vehicle will be able to drive by, pull in, maneuver back, and leave without encroaching onto their parking area.
Okay, and then the people that are dropping off their trash, they'll just pull in front of the trash cans? There's no like parking spaces for drop off, right?
Yeah, so we left enough room for multiple cars to pull up, park, and we left the sidewalk with a side entrance into it so they can get out and walk in without opening the big gate.
Thank you.
All set, Karen? Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Hanfield?
I just have a quick question, couple questions. And it kind of goes along with the garages. The second garage on the next sheet over, I guess garage 4. I was just looking at what we had for the other one, 4A. And it looks like, this one, you're going to be backing into a main kind of driveway area. And is there any way to shift that to the west so you can have almost a parking space before they're actually backing into the actual driveway?
Well, part of the location and the limitation is related to the Conservation Commission's non-encroachment boundary. So what we agreed to as part of their application process during phase 1 was restore everything in this stippled pattern here. So this is all part of the historical land disturbance that was here. So there were stockpiles of brick and stone and wood. And we agreed without clearing to go in here, clean all that out, plant conservation wildlife mix, and then provide that same mix for a 50-foot distance to the wetlands. So we have a natural vegetated buffer. So what we did is place the garage as far off the street as we could, while not fouling that encroachment boundary. So it's a bit stuck there in terms of grading. I was able to get it 4 feet off the road. I might be able to squeeze out another foot or 2, but I couldn't provide a full parking space in front of that garage.
What if you mirror, I'm not trying to redesign it, and I understand the reason now. The parking space to the north, if you shifted it over that way, would you have more space to push it back? I'm really concerned of the safety of backing into, somebody's gonna come around that corner and, you can't see when you're backing out of a garage. So that was just something maybe to think about.
No, it's a fair point. Looking at it, I could probably shift it north and accomplish the same goal. I'm sure I can accomplish that and get it off the street a little further. I don't know if I can give 18 feet for a standard parking space size, so the whole car is outside, but I certainly can get it so that, the rear mirror is exposed or the front windshield is exposed before they hit the street. So I think we can accommodate that by sliding it north and shifting it off the road slightly further.
Okay. The other question related is the connection points, which I see a little bit to the north. You got that T intersection. Is there any potential or future development where there will be a connection between the 2 properties, both there and where the new building in phase 2 with the cul-de-sac was, it looks like there could be a through road through there as well. So is there any thought, or is there any potential for that to, obviously to the east, there's vacant land. So is that part of was the consideration of the design?
Yes, absolutely. So the land here is, we're not too far along on it, but there are opportunities to develop that land. So what we did, and it would be under a common ownership. So we provided the stubs to allow for that interconnection. And part of that is the traffic information that Joe Balskis will talk about, where our entrance is kind of locked in if that site is developed. So coming through this site would be required to provide that left turn onto Willett. So we want to make sure that if development does happen, there is that possibility for interconnection. And so we felt it was appropriate to put the stubs in now. As for this one, no, there's no intent to extend this road any further. This is a very large wetland system that goes out to Minor Lane. This property is owned by a separate entity, and no intention. That's just a little stub to make sure people can back out of their parking space and leave.
So there is future utilities going to the east as well with that, the T intersection that you were talking about previously?
Here?
Yes.
Yeah, so we left a sewer stub. And again, part of that, we actually left that as part of phase one because sewer was so difficult here. So the original plan had a pump station and we were going to pump it back to Willits. We were able to purchase the property to the south that abuts the railroad, and through that get a gravity sewer here. So that gravity sewer extends all the way out to the railroad next to the Eversource property. So as part of all those improvements, we made sure that this property, regardless of ownership, had the ability to develop and drain via gravity through to the public system along the railroad.
Now, in regards to that, will there'll be notes, basic notes stating that the property to the east has rights to that access for sewer and for access as well, for driving access?
There was no intention of it being a public or common. This property here, I believe, has been purchased, and it is under common ownership, or at least the same group or members of that group. So it would be an agreement, a private agreement between the owner of this property and the owner of that property, but there's no intent to assign an easement where any development could drive through this property. There's a lot of things that would go along with that, including financing issues. So, in terms of who controls the property. So it's set up for connection, and it's set up for connection between a common entity. And that's about as far as we went with it.
Yeah, that's all the questions I have at the moment.
Okay, anybody else have any questions?
Hey, Greg, was it ever settled, if I can ask questions? This is Bert.
It has not been settled, so let's ask away tonight if you want. We do need to get that settled, but yeah, more than welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to apologize in advance because some of these questions may have already been addressed and answered previously, but just so that I can be up to speed. Regarding parking, is there visitor parking established for all of these buildings?
There is visitor parking built into the numbers. So there's 1.5 spaces allocated per unit, regardless of 1 and 2 bedroom. There is no assigned parking as part of this. So neither residents nor visitors get assigned parking. It's just kind of built into how it works. And in our experience, what we're seeing at the development next door at Waterford Park Waterford Park on Minor Lane, is there's always parking available throughout the day and at night, and sufficient spaces exist.
Okay, people tend to come with toys, and I'm wondering, do you have some sort of accommodation for, like, if people have boats that they're all going to take, are they going to be disallowed from having boats or RVs or things like that that suddenly just sort of appear in parking spaces?
It's a valid point. I can speak to the experience of Waterford Park. So no, a resident won't be allowed to park their boat or RV on the property. They might try to get away with it for a night, but they'll get a letter that asks them to move it or it will be moved. Parking's for residents only in their cars. And in the experience of Minor Lane or Waterford Park, there were some cars there or vehicles there that were there for a long period of time. People get tags when they're residents. Those cars did not have tags, and they ended up being other people that have a hard time parking, and it was their friend's car and they left it there. So that car was removed. So things will happen, but the management will be on top of it, and there will not be RVs and boats parked.
Great, thanks for that. I want to change directions just for a moment. So I have the pleasure of volunteering next door to you, and have been watching keenly the development as it's been going on. I love the water treatment setup that you have put in. When you started talking about the ability to accommodate the additional phase 2 buildings, it got me wondering, what kind of arrangements do you have right now for maintenance of those facilities? And is that somehow built into the contracts or the agreements you have with the town to make sure that what you are doing right now continues to work well into the future?
So there's a couple things. One, through the Conservation Commission, the installation is required to be observed and certified by the design engineer, which is me. I've been doing that so far. We're not quite yet complete, but come this spring, I expect to have this basin and this basin complete and sign off on them. In addition to that, I'm required to go out there and observe them for a period of 2 years and provide reports. I think it's in October, it might be December, to your environmental planner. That shows I went out there and the things are functioning adequately. And beyond that, that our native planting schedule is being implemented without invasive. So that will last for 2 years after completion. The last thing I can say is that our stormwater plan has a number of operation and maintenance guidelines that are provided on the plan. So if we were to, sorry, I think it went one too far, but it'll go back, but our stormwater operations and maintenance, as well as our isolated road inspection and maintenance, are provided up top. It requires at least one inspection per year for all of the main stormwater structures, if not 2. That includes roads, catch basins, swales, outlet structures, vegetation, all of the items that go into making this a successful stormwater management program. So those things have to be done every year. And from the standpoint of the applicant and owner, both the same entity, they build and operate these facilities, and it's in their best interest to have a successful project that not only works but looks good. So that's their prerogative, and they'll continue on that tact.
Absolutely, and I thank you. That's sounds really great. One last curiosity question: with all your lighting, this is going to be a really big complex. Safety is super important. Are you going to have cameras installed either on the buildings or on the light poles?
I can't say for sure. I can only speak to what I know on the other 2 developments I've worked on, is that there are, every building has security built into it in terms of access for residents through codes and electronic keys. There are cameras that are employed. I believe at the clubhouse at Minor Lane, that will likely be a similar thing here. But when it comes down to it, there will be a presence on this site from management, merely due to the size of the development in combination with Waterford Park.
Truthfully, I'm worried about some of the behaviors that have arisen around the state. most recently, another 30 or 40 cars were broken into and having their windows smashed. I think residents and frankly, law enforcement would appreciate the ability to maybe even advertise that that people are watching.
Yeah.
Something just to consider. All right, those are my questions. Thanks for letting me ask, Greg.
Great, thanks. Anybody else? Tim or Nicole? Mr. Hanford, can you take the screen down so I can see? Thank you. Appreciate it. I didn't know if anybody was even left over here. So is Tim, do you have any questions?
Not right now.
Okay, Nicole?
I do not right now. I think Bert had some great questions.
Okay, Mr. Balskis, are you up? Are you done, Mr. Canfield?
I am. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Balskis.
Good evening. Let me share my screen here. I gotta hold on a second. Let me just. All right. So for the record, Joe Balskis, PE, PTOE, State of Connecticut, Director of Transportation for VHB. We prepared the traffic impact study for this phase 1 and the phase 2 development. I'm going to be presenting just a quick summary of the traffic study that we prepared for this. That, as I mentioned, builds upon phase 1. So let me move this out of the way over here. There you go. So Brandon kind of showed the site environments where they are. I want to just bring it out a little farther out in terms of Willits Avenue and Boston Post Road. Brandon mentioned, and location of site and our study intersections. And what we looked at in phase 1 was both these intersections, and phase 2 we're looking at it as well in terms of how we address the potential traffic impacts from the development from 96 additional units. So just a map of that. I should be able to just go down screen here, right? Also want to just show, can you see my screen okay? Is it coming through all right? Okay. So this is Connecticut DOT's website, and you could just find it anytime you want to find. Just Google Connecticut DOT traffic monitoring, and it gives you the average daily traffic of roadways where they have traffic counts. And this map here, as you can see here, the site is right over here. The phase 1, phase 2 sites over here. Willits Avenue, there's a shopping center plaza, and here's Boston Post Road. So to the west of this intersection, we have about 11,700 vehicles per day, an average day of traffic on Boston Post Road. To the east, it splits. It splits with Willits Avenue. It takes about 6,200. Actually, I just realized this tonight looking at this. It has more volume on this section of road than Route 1 to the east of the intersection. So indication of Willits Avenue being an important roadway, obviously feeding into the city of London and points to the east. But this gives you an example of what kind of volumes that we're dealing with in terms of daily traffic on both Willits Avenue and Boston Post Road, and the importance of that traffic. So I pulled some of these figures out of the report. Oh, I also want to mention this too. These are out of the report, so that was submitted. I want to mention the intersection site distances at the driveway. So during phase 1, we helped Brandon lay out the driveway location where it needs to go to maximize the site distances. Meaning when you come out to Willits Avenue from the site, looking left, looking right, and based upon the speeds we saw out there. So the site distances were used to locate the driveway in accordance with Connecticut DOT requirements. So as Brandon mentioned, we're not changing the site driveway. So the site distances are still good for the phase 2 site driveway. We looked at a crash analysis as well for those 2 intersections. And this is a table on report showing 14 crashes over 3 years. Really not a problem in terms of crashes. No real patterns. Obviously, thankfully, no fatals. That's always indications of problems, no fatal injuries. But a good spread of accidents. I should say crashes. We try and say crashes these days, not accidents. And so, at the intersection of Willits Avenue, some rear ends. You're going to see that as signalized intersection, busy intersection, 4 lanes. Saw a couple angles. A lot of angles indicate you have problems turning. So we don't really have problems turning there. We just have a typical crashes for rear ends, and traffic signals actually do cause rear end crashes. So these aren't a significant amount of crashes. No definitive pattern, if you will, that needs to be reviewed. So the traffic being generated, I want to talk about that real quick. And this is phase two. Did I say, I think it's 106 units, Brandon, or there was a 96 units? I may have had it wrong.
It's 106 more
Thank
for
you. Okay, I think I said, thank you. I think I said 96 before. I meant to say 106. So 106 units. So how do we generate that traffic? Well, we could do traffic counts or other developments like this, but what we have been using, and this is the Office of State Traffic Administration, a process for using the ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. It's like the industry standard, if you want to call it that we as engineers use to generate traffic for developments that you may not have a recent traffic count for. So this is based on hundreds of studies across the country, and for these types of units, these types of residential. And so what you're seeing here is about 106 units, about half the units generate a trip. So in the morning peak hour, about 56 vehicles. Now that's 13 coming in, 43 leaving. In the afternoon, about 66, 42 coming in, coming back from work, and 24 leaving. Is this changing with the pandemic? A little bit. It may be changing. What we have been seeing is that we've been seeing in the morning peak hour being less of a morning peak hour and is more of a midday peak hour. But for purpose of this study, we're talking about low traffic volume. I mean, one car per minute is about 60 cars an hour. So what you're seeing here in our projections and these you could consider conservative as well with the current pandemic, that you're looking at maybe one car per minute that would be at the intersection, one coming in or leaving. So not a high generator when you look at the 6,000 cars a day on Willits Avenue or 11,000 cars a day on Boston Post Road. So the next excerpt I took was from the report is the distribution. Where is this traffic all going to? So I showed you how we projected it, but where is it all going? And this is a similar distribution we used in phase one. And basically, as you can see here, Route 1 to the east, meaning go up to Willits Avenue, turn right, and go up into Waterford and London, about 10%. We're figuring about 40% goes west, the points west, and 50% going to the east and south into London, getting to where the employment generators are in London, as we know, Electric Boat and others down there. That's one of the generators we're expecting. And so it builds upon the phase one distribution. And it's splitting 40. It's a conservative assumption. Half go left, half go right out of the side driveway, as well as coming in. But we're pretty comfortable with that assessment and that distribution based on volumes as well, and based upon the employment generators. This is a figure and report just showing you this is the build condition. So it's existing plus that site generated traffic I showed you, and it's for both the morning, afternoon peak hours, or the afternoons in the parentheses. This is Boston Post Road, and you can see here the side driveway. And the did I get it backwards? I think it's morning. Okay, I got it backwards. So the parentheses is the afternoon. So the morning is your higher number here. So they're coming out, going to work, going left or going right, and coming in the morning, afternoon, turning right here, turning left here, and they're facing these volumes here. So that's one reason why when Brandon was laying the site drive out, we said, let's give them those site. Let's have another little lane. We're going to need another lane because these aren't high volumes, but they're enough to cause a delay in the site drive with a single access, single lane. So Brandon and I, we said, well, let's make 2 lanes. So let's have a left lane and a right lane. So if someone's waiting to go left and someone wants to go right, they can go right because they're only looking at 1 lane versus 2 lanes. So 2 lanes facing this traffic, it works. It's a level service there, the level service C, if you will. So it does work. Enough storage on the side driveway, but that's why we have the second lane to the side driveway to account for, basically a doubling of the traffic. And then up at Boston Post Road, they're coming up here, they're turning left, going up here, and they're going to go left here, and then in the afternoon come back here and turn right here. So that's our traffic. Our traffic pattern is going to be basically is in the morning, come up here, going left here, in the afternoon, coming here and turning right there. So this is a key issue for us for myself as an engineer. Is what are we doing to these volumes at this traffic signal at the for the peak hours? How are we impacting that signal? And I'll walk you through that in a minute. So how are we impacting? So that's the volume. Here's a level service table and capacity table. Now this is in the report, table 5, and this shows you basically the intersection. All right, this is the intersection here, and a period, morning peak hour, afternoon peak hour. And I focused on the critical movement for us. Eastbound, westbound Route 1, not much of a concern. You see the level, you see the level service. This is again by approach. This is the overall intersection. And you can see there, BBB. So we're going from existing to no build. So existing, we're not really concerned about. We want to look at that. But our impact assessment is really here. Going from no build to build. Okay, what happens in 2023 when these are open, before they open, and what happens when they're open. So that's really from a traffic impact standpoint what you look at. So we look at this, yes, but it's really more of a concern of what goes on from here to here. And you read across this table, and it's a little complicated, but you read the AM and PM, and these are all the movements. You're seeing the same thing for the most part. Overall BBB, overall in the afternoon BBB. But we focus on the northbound. That is this approach. We're calling north. All right, that's where we're having the most impact, if you will, of traffic, where we're generating traffic to. So northbound, I'll give you a little lesson here, like I'm teaching my class. VC, that's your volume to capacity ratio. So when you approach 1, you're getting that capacity. Okay. So this is the approach, northbound approach, 0.72. Goes to 0.74 with our traffic. Delay in seconds per vehicle, 30, 30.7. Level service C. Level service C. The more important thing we're looking at here is this. Okay. 50 percentile Q. That's our backup, our length of backup of cars. And this is in feet. And this is our design queue. Okay, this is what we require. This is what DOT requires to design to is this. That's DOT's requirement. That 90%. That's like the critical queue that can happen out there. So morning, no problem. No 198. Yes, we're increasing it. We're going to increase it a little bit. We are. All right, a couple cars, maybe one car. Afternoons, we're going to talk about. So an afternoon peak hour, northbound, again, reading across, 0.87 capacity. So it's getting close. It's getting close to capacity, 0.88. Okay, so we're at a little bit of an impact capacity. Delays, and again, this is per vehicle each intersection. 33 seconds in no build, 35 seconds. So it's increasing delay, but you're not really gonna notice the delay increase because it's 2 seconds per vehicle. And the queuing, that's where we were looking at. We were focused on the queuing here. So 457, 460. All right, we have from Boston Post, from the center of this intersection to center of this intersection, we have about 550 of feet. Okay, just center to center. So what does that mean? So we're looking pretty good. Still not 100% where we want to be. So we actually have an impact. So we actually modified the timing at the intersection to make this work better. So if we don't change the timing there, then the queue may be closer to 500 feet. So by modifying the timing of the intersection for the afternoon peak hour, we can get it down so that we're not having 500 feet, or we're less than that. So we're not going to have any traffic really backing up to the site driveway. So yeah, that's what we do as traffic engineers. We look at what the impacts are. Can we mitigate it? How do we mitigate it? So I will tell you that the intersection does have limited capacity for additional traffic. So if Brandon was mentioning the development to the east, if that development comes in, then we're looking at doing some work here. That's not part of the application, but that's something that we'll be looking at if that development comes into play in the future. I should also mention that the DOT is replacing this signal. I think it's this later this year. Connecticut DOT is actually going to replace this traffic signal itself. So we are proposing some minor change in timing, like seconds, like little 3 or 4 seconds, to get our, it wasn't affecting the level of service. It was really just a queuing. So it's really tweaking it, really getting down to the details of the timing to really get it to work, so we can reduce that queuing for the intersection. And that's really the only impact we have is that. That's only, and we can mitigate that impact. But again, anything else beyond this that we talked about to the east, we'll have a need for probably doing some widening at the intersection. So what does that all mean? So this is our conclusions. I highlighted here what it means. Acceptable levels of service. So what does that mean? So DOT allows a level service D. Okay. There's no level service D on anything below level service D on these approaches. That's a good thing. Overall, that they use the overall. They don't look at the approaches overall, but we obviously have good level service. We have some queuing during peak times, but we're addressing that. So we are very good with level service. Okay, capacity is getting there, 0.87. The level service we're good, and we've mitigated the queuing. So what does that all mean? I mean, we said here time and revision. So we have modified time and revision at that signal. How are we going to do that? So this project is now over 200 units. This will require an Office of State Traffic Administration major traffic generator permit. And it'll be a full application or administrative decision application. So OSTA, they will be reviewing the application. The town of Waterford Local Traffic Authority, I believe is a police chief, if I'm correct, is part of that review process. So once this approval is here, provided from the town, we then go to OSTA, as we call them, and go through that state approval process. And they will be looking at this. They'll be looking at the development. They'll be looking at this intersection, and they'll be looking at the timing as well. And they'll look at and give us comments on our development in terms of traffic impact. But the conclusion here is that we don't have a significant impact. We're not by doing a time revision, we're not impacting level of service. The capacity is about the same, but we're also able to mitigate the queuing on that approach so that it's acceptable and not much different than what we have for no build. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Balskis? Can you lower your screen too, please? Thank you. Any questions on the traffic?
Gotta have one question. I usually get one question, at least one.
All right, Nicole, go ahead.
I do have a question. So given the assumption that that little T-zone for it currently leads to the road to nowhere, but could potentially have another development with the architect, what would that look like? Like what would, on your part, what would need to get done to really make that intersection larger? And if that's a project that sounds, kind of like not very feasible, what could we do to not make that property look, that little T-zone look like it's the road to nowhere? Like, could you add some additional landscaping, make it look more homogeneous with the design plan instead of just a dead end?
That's a site question, I think, for Brandon, right? I think you're trying to say that the interior intersection doesn't have just nothing going off to the pasture.
Pretty much, yeah. And my question to you was like, what would need to be done to widen it, like you had mentioned? Like, we're pretty much going to hit it at
Route 1. You think at Boston Post Road at Willits Avenue, that intersection? Yeah. We've kind of looked at it already. Brendan and I have been talking about the east development, and he's asking me, and so we expect that we'll need to widen Willits Avenue to 2 lanes near the gas station and the tire place. And as well as incorporate the DOT's new traffic signal. So yeah, we would need to do 2 lanes on that approach to accommodate the additional traffic that is beyond this development. So yes, it'd be 2. Right now is 1 approach lane as you come Willits Avenue to Boston Post Road. There'll be 2 lanes for that.
And is that something that's kind of already in the works? Is that something getting talked about?
No, we haven't. No, because we don't have a plan yet. So I was just talking with Brandon about that east parcel and said, based on what I've seen for phase 1 and phase 2, the intersection, it's got, as you saw in the table, it's got capacity, and it's the queuing. It's really queuing that's the issue. So in order to process that queue of traffic, that platoon that's coming out down Willits Avenue, you need 2 lanes to process it. So by having 2 lanes, you can then process that traffic so the queue is not going to back up across the site drive. If you don't do 2 lanes and you develop the east side, it will back across the site driveway. Is that clear? Do you understand that? I can show you if you want to see it a little clearer.
I understand enough. I guess what I'm asking is, does that impact any type of development plans on that other side for you, Brandon, if knowing that that whole intersection is kind of like already beefed up?
Yes. So there are improvements. So what we talked about is if there is a development on, we call it the Atlantic Broadband parcel. And what I'll do is I'll just show the best I have. Again, here's our site, our driveway. Here's Boston Post Road, and you can see the single lane here. So those under full capacity, the traffic's backing up currently, into this area here on its worst case. If we add more traffic from this development turning left out of this driveway, you could run into a case where people can't take a left turn. So by adding 2 lanes, that queue gets reduced down because people can stack next to each other. part of the reason that we are entertaining these connections and use of this driveway is the sight line that you get from this parcel, regardless of what's developed there. Looking right up the hill is a short sight line the further up the hill you go. So Myrock Avenue is kind of the top of the hill. Some limited sight lines. Myrock's right about here. As you make your way up this hill, if a development were to put a road in here and look right, their sight lines are going to be too short. So they have to push their driveway down the slope as far as possible to have sight line. That's good, except now we're getting into a condition where there's queuing issues. So it's kind of a balancing act between the required sight lines to the right and the queuing issues to the left. So regardless of what happens, there's going to be a solution down here, whether it's part of our development or not. If another development comes into here with more units, it's going to accelerate that process, and the town will have to be on board with any improvements regardless.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Nicole? Are you done?
I had a couple questions.
Wait a minute, I try to make sure Nicole's all set.
I am, thank you.
Yes, okay. Ken?
So kind of just going off of what Nicole just said, just kind of, I don't know if you have the answers to these yet. Obviously, it's not been proposed, but is there enough right of way for you to add extra lanes in there for the double lanes?
Let me share my screen, Brandon. Let me do that. Let me share my screen. So you can all see this. This is a Google map. And this is the site is down here, right here. And just real quick, actually I can use this, can I? So the site driveway is right here. So this is a crest right here. Brandon was talking, this is a crest. So in fact, how do I, oh, I gotta stop. No, I always do this. I get involved with using my edit. So there we go. Stop editing. Okay. So this is a crest. So there we go. Let me go here. So if you look right here, and of course my annotations are staying there. There's the crest that he's talking about. Oh, clear. There you go. So that's a brand new stuff. So that's why the driveway is over here, because you have that's Myrock Avenue right up there. You can see right there. So let me get rid of this. So now back to looking up here. So in this area itself, you can see there's the intersection, Boston Post Road. There's Willits Avenue, single lane. So you can see the Travis queued up here, waiting for a green light. Well, waiting for a green light from Boston Post Road system. So the right of way here itself, we have the right of way. We kind of looked at it already. The right of way is like right back here behind the sidewalk, and right along here as well. So we've looked at it. It's tight, but we believe it's feasible to do 2 lanes here, to widen here and still provide the sidewalk. So again, that would just let you just put this queue in half and allow you to process that and get all that traffic going left here. So yeah, we've looked at it. There is right of way there, meaning Willits Avenue City right of way there, and then obviously DOT right away at the signal. So we have looked at it. It is feasible. I'm not going to say it's easy to do, but it is feasible. It isn't perfect, but it is a typical improvement you'll see for intersections along Route 1 where you have traffic that you need to get a little more time onto Route 1. And now it's possible that the DOT may say Willits Avenue, the traffic is just as busy as Boston Post Road. And they may say, well, you know what, Joe, we'll give you a little more green time on Willits Avenue. It's just as busy as Boston Post Road to the east. They may do that, but we're assuming that with any future traffic beyond phase 2, that there'll be some type of work going on here at the intersection. Is that clear?
No, that answers the question. It was more curious to see if you had enough room for the right of way or the improvements, the future improvements. And the other thing is, how does this affect those other businesses now? Because the queue is now extended, or is it about the same that it's always been, or is because you are, I know just from going into that gas station and actually going into the development in there, trying to get out of that driveway is sometimes near impossible.
Yeah, understood, agreed. Been out there as well and seen the same thing. Now, they're so close to the signal that we're not gonna be able to address that. I mean, that's a whole different reconstruction because the gas station's right there, you know, and so is a tire place right there, see tires right there. So, you know, that's literally 25, 30 feet from the stop bar. So you're not gonna be able to change that because they're so close, they're driving so close here. So what we look at, as I mentioned before, is what is our impact? How much additional traffic or queuing are we adding to the queue? And if we did not retime the signal with a minor change, we'd be adding, you know, a couple cars to the queue. So it'd be getting longer. So by revising the timing, we can keep the queue about the same that is in the future build condition, the future non-build condition. So, but we're not going to be able to do that. This is a classic situation where you have an intersection like this, where you have development on the corners and you have the drive. I mean, every gas station owner wants to be right on the intersection for access. And so no, we're not going to be able to mitigate that even with widening the 2 lanes. It may help a little bit, you know, city tire, but it'll make it harder for the gas station possibly because now you're crossing 3 lanes. So it's a double-edged sword, if you will, you know, because you know, now you're trying to leave the gas station to go left on Willits, you're crossing 3 lanes versus 2 lanes. So, but it's the intersection is right next to the gas station, or a gas next to the intersection. So it's a curse, but it's also it's a boon for the gas station because the access is right there. So but during peak hours, and gas stations, we know we don't go necessarily during peak hour. We go as convenience, and we're driving by it. So if we can get in there and it's backed up, we won't go in there. We'll go another time. But yeah, there's not much I can offer you in terms of solutions to those because they're so close to the intersection. You would need to do a complete intersection redo in order to really address those situations, and that's obviously beyond the scope of this project. And DOT's not looking at it as well. They're replacing the traffic signal. They're not looking to do any major improvements to the intersection right now.
So, I mean, and again, this is just a final question on that. I know it's probably not a realistic question, but is it possible to do no left turn? Because if it backs up, I mean, I understand why you did the 2 exits, the left and right, but coming out of there, I mean, you have a better chance of going right out of the driveway than you do a left when the queue's backed up.
It's one of the situations where it's self-regulating. Okay, so if you live at this development and you work to the west, and at some point you realize you can't turn out, you can't go left, you'll go right, or you'll change your time of when you leave. You know, that's what it'll come down to. So, you know, no left turn out. You know, the volumes aren't there. If there's higher speeds, you know, that'd be something that you consider. If you have a higher speed roadway that was happening, that might be something for consideration. But I wouldn't say at this point in time you need something like that. And then the last thing is, how do you enforce that? You know, how do you you talk to the police chief, he's going to say, oh, I can't enforce that. That's a private driveway, and people are just going to just ignore it. So I would say you could do something like that on a higher speed roadway and higher volume. The volumes aren't, you know, they're like Route 1, you know, 6,000. If we're talking 15,000 cars a day, it'd be a whole different situation, and probably in a traffic signal. So yeah, it's not something I think is needed at this point in time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ken, you're all set?
All set.
Tim, Karen?
Hey, Greg, can I follow up?
Wait, 1 second, Bert. Karen, anything from Karen?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, Bert.
So I have to say, using Willits a lot, that there's I think this is like, I don't know what the right description is. This is going to be ultimately insufficient. I don't disagree with the numbers that you have coming out or in and out of the apartment complex. But even right now, there are many times when traffic backs way up on Willits Street. And if you want to make that right-hand turn, what's being lost in here is basically almost the people going down Route 1 coming from Waterford into New London that are going up Willits. Most of the time, they don't have to stop. It's basically an always right-hand turn arrow. And people basically just go flying down there. So while your calculations assume stopping and people being able to get across, the reality is most of the time that doesn't happen. That just doesn't work. And so you kind of got to factor that
We
component.
did. We actually did. If I can address that. So the traffic analysis is based upon, the lanes, the volumes, and the signal timing, and right turns on red. So the analysis, capacity analysis of the intersection does account for those right turns. As you're saying, they're coming eastbound. They have the right turn lane. They've got a green light or they got a red light. Then they turn and they don't slow down that much. I totally understand. I've been out there. I've seen it. But the analysis does incorporate that. And I think what you're trying to refer to is that they're coming down Willits Avenue, so the gaps might be less gaps, if you will, down Willits
Yes.
Avenue. And you're absolutely right. It part of it is there's a couple of things there. So part of it is just randomness of traffic flow. Part of it is that if someone does, if they get a red light and people are coming out of the Dollar General, they have their own phase at the signal, and they're coming through. That can slow them down. That can also slow them down if someone pushes the push button across Route 1. That can also slow traffic down, and that itself can lead to some significant queuing, because once you push the button, then Dollar General goes. It's like you see in the city when people push the walk button and things just stop. So a little different here, but the phase of Dollar General does that. So we've been out there. I've seen the queuing extend sometimes. And actually it's varied. The pandemic, it was we were before the pandemic, during the pandemic. I've seen it back up sometimes during lunch hour. But we have the volumes. We counted both in October last year and again in January, because we saw that maybe things were changing, some variation. So we got the most latest counts we could get and did the analysis. So it's the afternoon peak hour. We're not looking at every single hour of the day. There may be times when it does back up occasionally. That's why it's a 95th percentile. It's 95%. It's not guaranteed 100% of the time, but that's what we have to use with. That's what we have to use with our analysis, is to estimate how much that traffic there is and how much traffic will back up. And that's what the analysis does for us. So it gives us that estimate of the queuing. But it may be times where it does back up, that the push button's pushed, and we try to account for that in analysis, but you can't always account for that sometimes. And that's what could lead to some backup sometimes, is that beyond your projection. But again, it's an estimate of the queuing. It's not guaranteed, and we try to account for that traffic condition during the afternoon peak hour. So I don't mean to keep going on your question, but I want to make sure you're aware that we did incorporate in the analysis.
Okay, that's good. My other concern really builds on Ken and Nicole's comments, and that is the opportunity to widen the road. You're not actually talking about 2 lanes for more than about what, 50 feet, 100? You're not doing 100 feet.
Oh, we will. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's longer. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So how far back?
We haven't. We're jumping ahead of the horse or the cart. I forget here. We've only looked at it because there's talk about doing the east side, and I said, well, before we get to, let me look and see if we can do this. So I can't tell you exactly what it was, but we did look conceptually at what we could do there. It's a function of the right of way. It's a function of the length of queue we need for the traffic. So and then also, how do we retime the signal? Because if you keep the timing the same and add 2 lanes, the queue may be very much reduced. So there's a lot of things at play here. So a 50-foot left turn lane is not going to do it for us. I know what you're saying. You're saying then that left turn becomes blocked right away. No, the intent is to have as long of a 2-lane section as possible to obviously mitigate the traffic from that easterly parcel. That's what we're trying to do. There's existing queuing, which we've mitigated, but the new traffic, we're going to mitigate that. So I can't give you an answer exactly how long it's going to be, but it's going to be long enough so that we do not have an impact to the queuing. In fact, we reduce the queuing that is on that approach to the intersection with the traffic.
So the last point to make with regard to that whole question, and I appreciate this is definitely getting ahead of ourselves. The gas station in the center of the triangle there, that was reconfigured probably 10 years ago, and a number of modifications to that site were made. Even if there is right-of-way access, I'm not sure that you can actually take that space because of the requirements for bringing tanker trucks and refilling the gas tanks for that service station may just make that not feasible. So when you start talking about this, those factors probably got to get considered as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Are you a traffic engineer? You got some good comments there. But
I was on the board in the past, and I've dealt with a whole bunch.
Excellent.
Saw some of
Okay.
those.
If I can just interrupt, we do need to stay on target of the application.
Okay, agree. Let me just,
We're wandering and they're good points, but we do need to stay on this particular application.
Mr. Chair, if I can just real quick, just be clear. We're not proposing that, I know it's out there, but the idea of widening the approach is not going to reconfigure the driveways. We're not that for the gas station. We can't do that. We're not legally able to do that. So just so that's clear.
No more
Mr.
questions.
Olson, you're all set. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bert.
No, just saying no more questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hanfield, do you have anybody else?
We do have John Wicko, our project architect, on to discuss the buildings if you'd like.
Yeah, wait a minute. Oh,
Hey, Greg.
okay, 1 second. Karen, do you have a question now?
One quick question, or I think.
You're very spotty. There's something with the signal. I think we're getting a feedback from.
Can you hear me now? Hang on, let me just take this off. Can you hear me now?
I heard that.
Or no? Okay. Just to hear what we're talking about tonight, the traffic increases are accommodated by the road as it is currently, correct?
Karen, I don't know if he understood the question.
What we're talking about with the traffic engineer tonight, with the addition of phase 2, the road can accommodate the increase in traffic, correct?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's all yours again for your next presenter.
All right, Brandon, if you want to share the screen, we can.
Yep, I'll bring them up here.
Let's go to the pretty pictures.
Pretty pictures first.
Yeah, so John Wicko, architect for the project, 58 Prospect Street in Milford. The first building that we have is building D, and that is the same building as A and B, as Brandon said. There's the walkouts or on the opposite side of this is a basement that walks out, and you can see grade falls off down there. The same materials, same detailing, and I believe all the same colors to keep those buildings consistent. The new buildings, which are the most, I guess, more important, are building E and F. They're slightly smaller buildings. They serve a different purpose. They allow us to develop some different unit types, which reflect the varied tenants and the price points and price ranges for the tenants. So we're a development that accommodates many different types of tenants and what their expectations are. We are still using the same materials. We did detail this a little more like the clubhouse and using some darker colors. At the front entrances, you can see we have open stairs that go into the units. Those are clad in a James Hardy panel. and the color is like a gray green, and we're using that same gray green at the base of the corner towers. So there's elements that are similar, but the building does have a different look. We are using horizontal clapboards and vertical board and batten. So the buildings do complement each other. Brandon told you about the number of units. And they're on flat land, so they're 3 stories sitting on the property. We do have utilities connections that are screened by some solid vinyl fences. We've got a water room that's for the sprinklers and for water. Since we have no basements, we added those on in a very traditional roofline form that matches the other buildings. And there's still 1 and 2 bedrooms, and the unit sizes are scheduled on the architectural. And there's also schedules on the elevations specifically for all the different materials, asphalt roofs and vinyl railing, guardrails, things of that nature. I'm gonna go quickly through because it is, we don't want to make this too long. And we can go to the garages now. That's, believe it or not, the most diverse and maybe a little tricky to understand. We have what we call the 4. This is the 4B, which is the unit that is, I guess, next to that road that links the preserve to the woods. The garages themselves are highly detailed. We've paid attention to roof lines for massing and diversity. We've added some traditional elements to the buildings, like the shed storage units on the side. There's window cupolas at the center for some added architectural detail, variety of siding, vertical board and batten, the horizontal vinyl clapboard siding. And this particular unit is the one that faces towards the road. And there is an arbor that we have as part of the landscaping. We thought it was an important enough element to show on the elevation, just to show. And there's landscaping that goes on that, some roses or wisteria that'll house that. The other 4-bay garage is similar, except it has an open shed on the side for shelter from inclement weather or the sun if you're out walking your dog or enjoying the open areas that are adjacent to the building. You can see that the doors have some ornamental hinge details and handles, so they're not just bare bones. The developer wanted to make these attractive to drive by, use, and look at. The other garage is one of the more mundane. It's in the rear of the site, and they're back to back with the 5 units per. And we have storage sheds, which is a common theme. And then the end that faces the road, we detailed with some barn sash type windows for aesthetic reasons. The mail center is one of the first and most convenient building to access. It is detailed more like the preserve, which is the clubhouse, being out of a timber frame, a truss frame with black iron joints. So again, nicely detailed. We have natural wood trims, a stone base, some corrugated metal siding, very agricultural vernacular. Even have some, some architectural detail at the roof with the sugar house vent that comes up in a proportion that helps with the roof lines. The structure is large enough that everyone's protected when from weather at their mailbox. And you can see that yellow door that goes into the parcel room for the secure packages and drop off. That's a really quick version. I'll answer any questions you have, but just wanted to get through it quickly so the night doesn't get too late.
Okay, could you lower your screen or thank you. Any questions on the architectural drawings? Tim?
More of a comment. I'll just say that I like the design of the garage units. I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Thank you.
Ken?
Just, I don't know if this is for the architect or for Brandon. Regarding, I know one of the things that we're looking at is affordable units in the town of Waterford. And I was wondering if any of these units will be affordable or at any portion of them. And just a general question, just curious, typical rents for units like these.
Yeah, Brandon, I'm not
I'll do my best in the affordable. So the affordable component was offered as part of phase 1. I don't believe there's an affordable component of phase 2, but as John described, the unit diversity is increasing across the site to provide a more diverse and varying level of rents for the 1 and 2 bedrooms based on size, location. So there is still an affordable component from the phase 1, 98 units. I think it was 10 units, and that'll hold across phase 2. In terms of rents, I quite frankly can't speak to what the expected rents are, especially now, seeing it seems like things are pretty wild out there in terms of not just rents, but also single family homes. So I wish I could give you an answer, but I can say, you know, they will be market rate, and we are trying to provide a smaller unit that can accommodate more people from the area for living here.
Thanks. I did have another question, but I can save it for later. It's regarding the stormwater, but so I'll just leave that open.
Well, if you want the question answered, Ken, ask them now, because during our discussion, it may be more difficult to get.
Okay, the only one question I had was regarding the stormwater, kind of goes back to what Bert was talking about earlier, but I was wondering, and maybe this is more for the commission versus the applicant, do we want to require bonding on these stormwater facilities based on section 25.612 and bonding to make sure that everything is completed and you know, I can read what the section says. I just don't know if we want to do that as the commission.
Okay, so Ken, I think that is a discussion amongst the commission question that I didn't know that's what you were asking. I thought you had a question about the stormwater for the presenters, but that's something we probably should discuss in our discussion then. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Karen?
One quick question. Can you hear me better? Can you hear me this time?
It's still in and out. You're getting a lot of feedback, I think. At least I am.
It's terrible. Okay. Just on the garages, the only access through the main car door, and are they separated on the inside?
Yeah, the architectural set has them drawn, and we have a demising wall for each of the units, and those are all rated walls. And the only access is through the overhead door.
Thank you.
Is that it, Karen? So, okay. Nicole?
No questions. I like the aesthetic.
Okay. Bert?
Actually, that was a really important question. In the case of a power outage, how do people get inside their garage to get their car?
There are emergency releases from the inside, but at the exterior, I'll have to talk to the developer to see what attitude he wants to have towards that. I think there's a release that you have from the outside as well, but it might be a battery backup. So I can't answer that 100%. But you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry, I think that's really important to address. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from any commission member to the three presenters? No. Okay, Mr. Hanfield, do you have anything else?
Yeah, real quick. Again, thanks for having us. I just want to touch that the design review board did give us a positive recommendation earlier today. We've addressed all the staff comments that we can address. There were a few that came up today from the design review, crosswalks, shifting the garage away from the road. We feel we can accommodate those minor technical changes. From a floodplain perspective, I hope you saw that, we went through the effort with FEMA to remove ourselves from zone A before coming back to you. That was intentional so that we could actually have a residential structure on this site. So we think we have a complete plan and appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Hanfield. I do appreciate the response summary from you. We're trying to make it easier for people like you to come and make presentations and get their projects approved. And so it's always nice when you make it easier for us. And I particularly like your response right after the issue, so I can, get your answer, not have to search for it. And I think you guys put together a nice team, a nice presentation. We're happy to have the developments in town, and thank you guys for your presentation.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Abby, can we go through this now?
Absolutely, yep, and Mark has a staff report prepared. He can give you some of the staff comments and conditions that have been suggested, as well as a quick sort of discussion on the bonding issue that kind of brought up.
Sure. All right. The commission received in their packets the staff report outlining the project executive summary. Also has the findings and conditions there. However, through the discussion tonight and also relative to the design review board review, there will be 2 additional conditions added. First condition is that the design review board requested 2 painted crosswalks to be shown. One at the south end of the property where the 2 garages are, across the entrance to that parking area, and the second one connecting building E and F across the parking lot. The project engineer stated earlier on in this discussion that they were amenable to those additions. The second condition would be to adjust garage G4 north in order to accommodate a better traffic flow and promote some better safety backing out of that garage that Commissioner Petrini had mentioned. The engineer also was positive on that in looking at that and seeing if he cannot or if he can move that garage a little further north. Other than that, adding those 2 other conditions, if the commission has any questions on the staff report, I'd be happy to answer that.
Any comments from the commission to open up the discussion here? Anybody want to start? Anybody? Ken? Hey.
I'll jump in. Again, I got to say, I really appreciate the presentation. I think it was done very well. I think the plans were very well done as well, and all the reports as well. And I'll echo what Greg, Chairman, said as well. It's nice to have things clear reports so that point out the correct, point you where you have to go versus having to. So I definitely appreciate all that. And, with that being said, I'll again, my only question or to the commission is, how we're going to, if and how we're going to handle any bonding on the stormwater.
Mark, you were going to address that for a second, but then I don't know that you did, so.
Yeah, right. Let's address that. The statutes provide for bonding for erosion and sedimentation control only. However, as part of the project, as-built are required prior to getting CO. Which guarantees that the stormwater has been installed properly according to the plan. In addition, so that's one thing that we can use is standard on all site plan projects is that we require as-built and a report from the engineer that all the stormwater has been installed properly. In addition to that, there were conditions in the inland wetlands permit as well that addresses the stormwater, and that also be not only installed properly with as-built, but also to maintain the stormwater system for a period of time. So in terms of bonding, that's actually covered by requiring the as-built, and if the system is not installed properly, then they don't get a CO for the project until it is.
So Mark, in section 25, it talks about, provide a bond for the cost of the construction of any performance monitoring of the stormwater facility required per conditions of the permit approval. The bond shall be in the amount of 100% of the estimated cost of the stormwater facility. Is that similar to what you're talking about with the erosion bond?
That's correct.
Okay, so they're one and the same?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Statute allows the commission when it's a site plan approval to require a bond, but that's only for erosion sedimentation control measures, not for a design and guaranteeing design. Like I said, the guarantee is the as-built. The engineer is required to inspect as it goes in, and also at the end of the project to provide an as-built that it functions accordingly in the way that it was designed.
And I think another point too is that historically bonding has been associated with any improvements that are going to be public improvements versus those that will take place on private property. And so given that this is a privately managed stormwater system, and again, the connections into, so for example, if depending on how this were to connect into a town facility under MS4 or other pieces there, that may affect in the future where the commission wants to go with bonding, but this isn't, we're not talking about something that is a public improvement. And so there hasn't been a large precedent on these site plans for specifically bonding the stormwater features, as Mark said, with the exception of not having a bond, but having the as-built and the certificate of occupancy tied to it. It's been a pretty strong ability for us to control the verifying that what was promised is built.
Well, so my concern, and I hear what you're saying, and I know it's a private development, but I've seen over the years lots of private developments that have done detention systems similar to this, that there's 24-inch oak trees growing in them today. So my concern is that, today we're talking about approving this and that, the detention is going to work fine. And then, there's going to be an as-built, but there's no guarantee, 10 years from now when we're all retired or whatever the case may be, that, it's being maintained and developed. And again, I just want to make sure that, because I know there's a bunch in town that are private developments that there were bonds, were posted for them. And right now they're filled in, detention basins that are no longer working. So that's where my concern comes from. And again, this does dump into Finger Brook. I mean, there is a larger, stormwater system that this connects to. So it doesn't just end at the site. It does continue on. So there is a downstream, effect if they're not maintained properly. So again, that's how I'm thinking about it. And over the years I've seen, and I know it's tough for the applicant because they're required to do this, but once they're done, it's kind of, a lot of these things, they kind of get forgotten. So I just want to make sure that it's, at least from the construction standpoint, that we're, making sure it's done correctly, done per plan, but also that there's some accountability down the road to make sure that that these things are taken care of, whether it's through the town having to seek. I know sometimes we could do the operation and maintenance plan and either Maureen or somebody or zoning can go and make sure that they're cleaning their catch basins and they're doing all the maintenance work that's required to maintain these in an operating procedure. I mean, and again, not to ramble on, but I know New London, they didn't maintain their storm drainage for 30 years, and it took thousands of dollars for them to clean out all their catch basins and do all that stuff. So again, I want to kind of set a precedent that we take care of this stuff, and that the owners and applicants take care of their stormwater as well.
Any other comments? I have a question for Mr. Balskis. Is he still here? Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, great. Just a question on the condition of applying for the major traffic generation certificate. Is that an automatic?
Yes. The state of Connecticut Office of State Traffic Administration, regulates all developments, no matter where they used to be only on state highways, no matter where you are in the state of Connecticut, over 100,000 square feet and 200 parking spaces. So if you're 100 units of housing or less, you get grandfather. There's no jurisdiction. But anything over that size and those thresholds, they are regulated by the state of Connecticut Office of State Traffic Administration.
Right,
And
so
that approval, Greg, comes after, Mr. Chair. That approval comes after your town approval. They can start reviewing it, but they cannot approve it until after the towns approve it.
okay, so you're looking for an approval from them, right?
We will, once this is approved here, our next step is to submit an application of the detailed plan, site plans, drainage analysis, and traffic study to that office, and then they'll commence a review. And then the town's local traffic authority is copying all that correspondence, so the town is part of that process.
Okay, is there a chance that it does not get approved?
There's always a chance. In my 32 years, 33 years now of doing this, I've seen one not get approved. There's always some type of solution to a project, and it's usually involving mitigation of traffic or an impact. And some actually involve drainage. We've seen some projects where drainage has been a major issue as opposed to traffic. So I would say it's very, very rare. I used to compare it to the Red Sox not winning the World Series, but I can't say it anymore. So it's very rare. It has happened in the past, but usually there's a solution made to a plan, revision made to a plan to get approval.
Okay. It would just seem to me that one of the conditions should be approving that certificate or application.
Well, that's a legal question, and I'll give you my traffic engineer's expertise in that. I don't believe a town agency can condition an approval on a state and another agency. So I think towns do say that, but I don't think it's legal that a town can require another agency's approval for their own approval. But that's just me saying that. But that's my understanding of it.
Correct. So the commission would make its decision based on its local authorities, and the project would be ultimately controlled by whether or not the state grants the approval and allows for things to go forward. So that traffic approval will be necessary, but they are two separate processes.
Mr. Chair, I would say this: if there's concern about that, the town's local traffic authority, you could be in consultation with the town's local traffic authority, which I think is the police chief, throughout the process. And he or she can forward you the copies of information that are transpired between the applicant and OSTA. So you could be at least see what's happening and be part of the process. But the town does have a voice in the process. The town's local traffic authority. That's the role of the local traffic authority.
Mark is just looking up our police comments for traffic, just to make sure that there's nothing in there that we're not aware of any
No,
reservations.
traffic.
Okay.
Their concern had to do with the lack of the sidewalk connecting phase 1 to the clubhouse. And that's it.
So
Okay.
we received nothing from the local traffic authority through the police department on concern over the Willits Avenue, Boston Post Road connection, that traffic.
Okay. Any other comments on the application? If
Yeah.
not,
I do, Greg.
Okay.
I know we're trying to meet state statutes regarding affordable housing. It was news to me that this doubling of the size of the plan, basically at the original size, I think there was 10% that was set aside. Now this takes it down to 5%. It actually takes us further away from the 10% target rather than closer to it. I just put that out there. We're going to have to address, I think there's going to be something to talk about later today, but that is a concern to me.
So any other comments, or can we entertain a motion?
I'll put out a motion if there are no other comments. I'll move that we approve with conditions the Waterford Woods Phase 2 multifamily modified site plan application permit number PL-22-1 for 384 and 394 Willits Avenue extension with the conditions 1 and 2 that appear in our staff report, and then adding to those conditions a third and a fourth condition. So the addition of painted crosswalks specified by the design review board, and the fourth one being adjusting, I think it was garage G4 to the north for the safety of vehicles backing out. And then also to adopt the findings 1 through 8 that are listed in our staff report.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Karen for approval of PL-22-1. I just have one comment on that moving of the garage. That's if possible, or is that something that can be done? I wasn't clear that it could. I wasn't clear that it could be done.
It can be done to provide, I can get up to set 10 feet so that there's some visibility in the back of the front of the car.
Okay. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on it, or can we vote?
The question on the bonding, or does that need to be addressed in the motion as well, or no?
Well, it's not in the motion. If you would like to amend the motion, I guess you can try to amend the motion. But I'm not sure we have authority for it.
I mean, section 25.6.12, it says the town may require the applicant. I don't know. I mean, that to me says we have authority. Doesn't say anything about private or public.
There is a provision for bonding. I think it's a question for the commission about whether you think it's necessary for this particular project, or if you are looking to have a discussion globally before going down the road of bonding these projects. That's a decision of the commission.
I think I'm of the mind that the bonding's not necessary on this. They won't be able to get their CO without actually building these improvements. And down the road, if they were to fill in these retention ponds or something like that, I think that would become a zoning enforcement matter, because they would have, made a site change without coming in and modifying their site plan. And that would subject them to, an enforcement action under General Statute 8-12, I think. So to me, I think the bonding issue is not as big a deal for me. We have other procedures to address it if it becomes an issue 10, 15 years from now, something like that.
So that's Tim's opinion. Ken, I tend to agree with Tim, but you're free to make a motion, Ken, or amend the motion to that. I don't want to restrict your ability to do that. So if you do it and it gets a second, we would vote on the amendment and then we would vote on the main motion.
Yeah, I'm just, again, I'm concerned about the stormwater, and again, just historically, what I've seen is a lot of times these things are built and forgotten, and stormwater is a very important part of the development. And if we're not addressing and making sure the stormwater stays clean, I mean, if they're not maintained, they're and there's no provision, there's no provision for zoning to go in there and because the sediment from the sanding of the roads fills in these basins, or the leaves fill in the basins, or things aren't maintained, there's nothing. Zoning enforcement can't go, I don't believe, can go in there and tell them to clean them up. I mean, can they do that, Abby or Mark?
Section 25.6.13 gives the town the right of entry to inspect either during construction, maintenance operations, and routine operations.
So the stormwater management plan that governs would be something that would be part of the site plan approval. So if it weren't being followed, there would be an enforcement potential if there were either modifications made, or if something had failed, or if there was a problem there. We can certainly go back and look at it under those provisions. It sounds as though there may be a larger conversation for the commission about policies on how the longevity of inspections, the longevity of annual reporting to the town. Certainly the stormwater management operations plan has to go forward in perpetuity. But in terms of town reports, there may be an element the commission wants to consider in the future.
I mean, I guess I would just propose an amendment to the motion, just adding the required bonding to maintain the stormwater system based on the detailed estimate by the applicant.
Is there a second to that amendment? So I don't hear a second to the amendment. So we'll have to move on, Ken, with the main motion. Is there any other discussion on the main motion? Hearing no discussion, we can put it to a vote. All in favor, and maybe we can just do a voice vote because we have a full commission. So all in favor, actually, if you're in favor, no, strike that, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna go through and ask everybody if they're in favor. Tim?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And Nicole?
I'd like to abstain because this was a wonderful presentation, but I do not feel like I adequately reviewed the materials to give a worthy.
And I'm in favor too. So it will be 4-0 in favor of approval of application PL-22-1 with the 8 findings of the staff and the 4 conditions. Thank you for the presentation. Again, I don't see how everybody's still here. Thank you, Mr. Hanfield, Mr. Wiggles, Mr. Boskus. And we hope to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care. Have a great night.
Yeah, you too. Okay, item number 5, review of opt-out of Public Act 21-29, discussion of and possible action on an opt-out of the provisions of PA 21-29 concerning accessory dwellings. Abby, you want to give us a little bit of history on this?
Sure. So just to refresh everybody's memory, there's been a number of meetings and an extended public hearing that opened on January 25th and continued through the March meeting, at which point it was actually it was continued to the February 22nd and then to the March 8th meeting to provide adequate time for folks to have opportunity to comment. I don't believe, we certainly have a record of the commission received 3 public comments relative to the opt-out, which you should all have copies of from previous meetings. The question on the table right now is whether the commission is intending to recommend an opt-out from the provisions of Public Act 2129 relative to accessory apartments, or if the commission is intending to stay in and not recommend an opt-out, at which point there would be a need to revise our regulations prior to that January 1st of 2023 timeframe to be entirely consistent with the state statute. Discussion to date surrounding the opt-out has been around a couple of key issues. Basically, the finer points of design and the ability to be flexible in the future and make sort of subsequent modifications that may be slightly different from the state statute should the commission want to see those in the future. So some of those things involved design standards for accessory dwelling units, particularly detached ones. The statute does provide the ability for the commission to regulate the design of those accessory apartments if they're detached or attached, frankly. If there is a design standard in place similar for the single family homes. Waterford does not have a single family home design standard, and the commission had previously discussed wanting to have some kind of design element relationship between detached accessory units and the primary structure. And so that for that reason, and then there had been some conversation, and I'm not sure where the commission has landed on it, but relative to relational building heights in the statute, it talks about whatever the district standard is, you can sort of matching that standard. And there's been and then there's been some discussion about kind of going lower or having some kind of proportional height relationship between primary and accessory structures, as well as placement on the lots and whether or not there would be a standard adopted in terms of a detached structure needing to be in front, behind, or whether that was even an issue for the commission. And then the other thing again was to preserve some flexibility into the future, that if the commission goes a few years in and decides that there's operationally or what you're seeing in terms of applications, if we do have some relative to accessory units, if you wanted to make changes that were not consistent with statute in the future, but you hadn't opted out, you'd sort of be bound by that statute after the 1st of January of 23. So those basically there's sort of 2 directions. In either case, whether the commission votes to recommend to the RTM an opt-out, or whether there's not one recommended at this time, I think there's been a general recognition that our current accessory dwelling and accessory apartment regulations really don't fit to the current needs of our residents, are a little bit out of step with some of the things that we would want to force, things like relationships between occupants of apartments and those types of things. And so there's a number of things that need to change regardless of whether the opt-out is pursued. So to that extent, the decisions can be to not opt out and to amend the regulations to simply be consistent with PA 2129, or to opt out to adopt specific findings and state on the record the reason for the opt-out, which we would publish and then forward on to the RTM for a final discussion and vote, potentially at their June meeting, depending on your timing. I did put together just quickly, so as your discussion continues tonight, I put together quickly a series of findings and proposed motions under either scenario that we can talk about. But I thought perhaps it might be useful to have a discussion with the commission about what direction you are trending in right now, and if you have any further questions.
Okay, I thought we were gonna get that for tonight, but I'd like to personally see the list on both sides to see. Do we have that?
So here, so what we've done.
Okay, well,
here- Yep.
I mean, I don't know that I wanna, I'd like to know what everyone else thinks on the commission. I don't really wanna look at it on the screen. I'd like to see it written and maybe we address it at the next meeting.
Mhm.
So this is taking item number 5 and really 8B altogether, right? So we gotta try to figure out what we wanna do with this. Does the commission have any preferences as to what they wanna do? Or they wanna look at the pros and cons or the both sides of the findings? To opt out, to not opt out, see what the motion looks like and deal with it at the next meeting, or do you wanna do it now on the screen? So we can try to entertain what everybody wants to do.
Next meeting.
Yeah, personally, with the way the meeting has gone tonight, going line by line through Abby's document in real time seems less efficient. I think it'd be great to review Abby's document and then come back to it and talk about this at the next meeting.
Okay,
I agree with that, and partially because I've read everything that's been sent to me, but obviously I wasn't here for 2 months, and I haven't had a chance to listen to the audio from our public hearing, and I think I would need to listen to that before I could really participate in deliberations. Would it be possible to have somebody send me a link to that?
Yep.
Okay, thank
They're
you.
all up. Yep. We'll send you the links, and for anybody else, for Nicole or for Bert, they're all up on our Planning and Zoning Commission website under past meetings. We have YouTube links to all of our past stuff. So we'll get those links out to the whole commission if anybody needs to refresh.
Thank you for sending that to me. I did watch a few. I appreciate it.
okay, so is that, Ken, you on agreement to maybe next meeting we'll do that?
Yeah, I'd like to see the document and then we can kind of look it over and discuss it next meeting.
And I apologize. I will take full responsibility. These were drafted and I thought that I had given them to staff to include in your packets and it didn't get included and I caught it late today. So that's entirely on me.
It's okay, we just don't want to rush through it.
I got you.
So that's 5 and 8B. How about 6? Do we have any correspondence?
No, not at this time.
No, okay. 7A and B, review of past months and ongoing projects and upcoming projects. Anything to report on that?
Just a few pieces. We are having some preliminary coordination between the various ownership interests at the mall about the potential to look at zoning opportunities to facilitate a potential for mixed use at the mall. And so that is, we're in the early stages of organizing, having those conversations in the first place. So we're getting everybody kind of together on that front. So we'll keep folks posted as we know more about the direction the various ownership interests are looking and taking. We anticipate very soon a application for a regulation amendment under section 19 to come in for Great Neck Road, right across from Hendel's and south of Defender, for a combination single family duplex in common ownership residential development. And so that's something that we anticipate seeing likely to be received at the 26th meeting. So that'll be on its way. There's preliminary discussions going on right now for some commercial industrial space on Willits Avenue at the former McNamara's. And so that's a series of sort of contractor support buildings and sort of mixed, it could be storage space, flex space, and office space that people can use for various commercial pursuits. We also have a similar use that's in preliminary discussion and will be coming to the commission in the coming weeks and month or so for 21 Gurley Road. So a similar kind of thing. We're seeing this real push for flexible commercial industrial space that people can kind of fit out some of these spec areas for individual businesses. So those are coming. We've been approached by an attorney who is interested in having discussions about cannabis regulations, and we've said that certainly the commission is the moratorium is in effect. The commission is certainly on track to start taking up that conversation. I think, Greg, we talked about that June, July timeframe to have those conversations. And so there's been a request to have just an initial staff meeting to talk about what some of the various applicant desires would be from folks who may be looking to apply should the commission enable some of those licensing uses in the future. So just to get some direction from the private sector on where they'd hope to see that stuff go. And then other pieces, the town center ad hoc committee was reformed by the Board of Selectmen. So they'll be going through very soon the design work, the particulars of design surrounding the paths and streetscape around the pond in the town center. So that is something that's moving forward. And so that will result in a culmination of full design and permitting documents that can then be funded for construction at a later date.
Thank you. Any questions on what Abby has said about the past and upcoming projects? I just have a comment that I want to talk to the commission about. I don't ever want to stop anybody from speaking, but I think we really need to focus as a commission as to the issue that's in front of us for several reasons. One, it labors the meeting down, makes it longer than it should be. The applicant has to spend money on the people that are presenting with us. But most importantly, if we address issues that are not relevant to the application in front of us, and for some reason the application gets denied or gets challenged in court because it gets approved by the neighbors because we dealt with issues that weren't relevant to the application, I think we're exposing ourselves. And I think in Abby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have very little litigation for land use in Waterford. Is that accurate to say?
You cut out a little bit, very little what?
We have very little litigation surrounding land use in Waterford.
Yep, very, very little. The commission is
Yeah.
very tight on its policies historically.
We'd like to try to stay that way because it's costly. And Tim can probably vouch for that, it gets very costly. And a lot of towns expose themselves. You read it in the paper every day. We have been left out of the recent articles on land use and the towns locally in southeastern Connecticut, and I personally like it that way. I think it's a good thing to be out of the articles and the papers on that. But if we start addressing issues, they were good issues, they're valid issues, the intersections and all that, but it really wasn't germane to the topic at hand, and I think we should stay close to that to keep us out of the hot seat or pickle. So
I gotta be perfectly honest with you, they totally did, and I didn't follow up with it because it wasn't that big of a deal, but that northern T, so I don't know if it was in the north, but that T area, basically the road anticipating and adjacent road, that I guess I need some feedback on if addressing that and like future plans for the road would be considered exposing us for, is that not relevant to the plans? Does that make sense?
no, I think that is. I think that's the site plan.
Oh.
Anything that's on the site plan in front of us. And I think what we can probably do is look to, if we're looking to approve a site plan, we should check the site plan regulations in our regulations to see what we can act on and what we can't act on and what we should be considering and what we shouldn't be considering. That's the only thing I'm saying is if we're looking for a regulation change, we should look in the regulation change regulations to see what we should be considering, what we shouldn't be. Special permit is another thing. Site plan is another thing. When they come in for a pre-application informal hearing, we should be making sure we abide by those regulations to keep us out of trouble. So I think anything to do with the site plan tonight, within the confines of it, or the traffic, but the redesign of the intersection and stuff, we just need to be careful, that's all.
So you don't think, Greg, the queuing of that light has anything to do with maybe not, they addressed it tonight, but the future development is going to block, the queue is going to potentially block without the redesign. So who does that fall onto? The applicant to redesign that intersection if they can't meet the traffic standards, or where does it leave us?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is if it has to do with a future development, then we deal with it at the future development. I don't think we should be addressing, and Abby, you're gonna opine too. I just, and maybe we should have counsel on this to advise us what we should be considering, what we shouldn't be. But if it's about a future development, even though it's the same applicant, I'm not sure we should be addressing that in this application. I mean, that's just my
Especially
opinion.
with site plan is a very specific thing, and there are very specific sort of parameters. So, had the traffic analysis for this particular site plan shown a failure of associated traffic infrastructure, then that's a little bit different, because they were required to produce a traffic analysis as part of their site plan application. And if there were a problem with that, that would be something that the commission could certainly act on, condition, and have issues with. But especially when, if we get into offsite improvements or future stuff, it's context, it's good information, but certainly actions couldn't be taken on those potential future amendments. So, certainly the commission can talk to applicants about future questions that they have, but it has to be crystal clear that I think Greg, you have a good point, that any action has to be within the confines, especially with site plan, where there's very strict parameters about offsite improvements and things that don't pertain just to that plan.
So Ken, to your comment, if you think that the next development is going to be a problem, maybe that's one of the developments or the applications where we have our own study done, like we've talked about, you and I, and we've talked with Abby about it. Is that maybe something where we want our own traffic engineer to talk about it if we think that's really going to be a problem? Because that intersection might be a problem. That light where they change at the same time, I can't believe there's not more major accidents there, but that has nothing to do with this development.
Oh, no, and I agree with what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm just, that is a trouble spot in the town of Waterford. I mean, it definitely has its issues. I mean, it's going to be reviewed by OSTA, so they're going to go through it. DOT is going to go through it. I mean, they're going to have to look at it at some point, I would think, in regards to this. And I do know that the site plan for the gas station was particularly, designed, based on a lot of the characteristics in that intersection as well. So again, I mean, the future development may require the, redevelopment of that intersection. And, I mean, now it doesn't, because it met all the requirements.
And I think it's just one quick point on it. As we go into the POCD, and as we know that there are particular areas in town where some of these issues are going to need to be addressed, regardless of what application comes, where we know any new development is going to have an impact on intersections and the long-term functionality, we have an opportunity now to get things into our plan and then to pass them up through the chains of regional transportation and statewide transportation plans, so that they get onto DOT's list when funding is available. We become eligible for some of these things. And so I think part of our job and part of what the commission's work can be in the next phase of POCD stuff is really making sure that we have that queue of priority transportation needs in place, so that we get ourselves ready for those conversations. Some things are already included. Willits is on the state's radar, but there are certainly other places that I think we'll have an opportunity to discuss through that process.
So in sum, I'm just asking everybody to maybe look at the regulations before, if you have a special permit, a site plan, regulation change, a pre-application meeting, something just to familiarize ourselves with what's actually applicable at the meeting, so we don't get ourselves into trouble. That's all. The next one is administrative review. We have the discussion of the consultant proposals for the plan of preservation, conservation, and development. We have the two proposals here. We're going to have a presentation, Abby, at the next meeting, correct?
Right. So what we're looking at, there's two things. I have one consultant, FHI, can be available on the 26th or the 10th. H&H can only be available on the 10th. And so the question for the commission is, it's really a scheduling and special meeting. Greg and I had discussed the potential to have a special meeting before regular meetings in order to accommodate whatever's on the agenda, and to have specific time to have the consultants present. So both of them are available between 5 and like 6:15, 6:30. I think we talked about having these potentially in person and allowing enough transition time to be able to reset between consultants and to get to the start of our meetings for 6:30. So, I think there's, maybe if folks started at 5:15, and we talked about 5:30, but, I'm making sure we have that buffer space to get everybody into basically a half-hour presentation. What I discussed with each consultant team was half an hour, which includes presentation and commission questions. And it's an opportunity to get sort of that fit test, and for the commission to decide which of the two firms best suits the needs for the project. So I guess the question is, do you want to try to break them up over two potential special meetings? Do you want to have both come on the 10th and just stagger? And then what's people's availability for a special meeting on either of those days?
I think sorry, go ahead, Greg.
No, I was a little confused. They're both available on the 26th or both
No.
available on the?
They're both available on the 10th. Only FHI is available on the 26th. H&H is only available on the 10th.
Okay.
So if you want them on the same day, then we would need to schedule the 10th.
Go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure it was clear on that.
Yeah, I think I would prefer to see both presentations on the same day. It'll make it a little bit easier to compare them. And I'm available on the 10th.
So why don't I just put out a proposal so we can comment just on that? How about the 10th at 5:30 for both proposals? Does that work for everybody?
I don't know that I can be there for 5:30, but I don't get home till 6.
Do we have a big agenda that night, Abby?
So the 10th
mean-
is also our public hearing on the affordable housing plan, where Planometrics will be going through that with everybody. So I think we do need to start at 6:30 for that meeting. We have, so on the 26th right now, we have the two public hearings. So if we could certainly, if the special meeting started a little bit earlier, we could probably work on the timing of that if we needed to perhaps see if the consultants were able to shift a little bit later, and then start the public hearings for those two regulation amendments that were received tonight a little bit later. Mark, are you aware of anything else coming in for the 26th?
Well, but they can't both be here. On the
Oh,
26th.
so one could come on the 26th, and then, right.
I agree with Tim. I think both weighing them side by side. But on the 10th, we have the public hearing for the affordable housing. We have not had great participation so far. I mean, do we really think that all of a sudden it's going to be a surge of participation?
It may not be at all. And certainly we could, schedule the special meeting, and then, when we post for the public hearing, sort of schedule a start time a little bit later. So if that start time was, 20 minutes after the start of the regular meeting or something, really all I'm looking for is that transition time. So if we don't start right at 6:30, that we don't have an issue, but again, it's gonna be
how much time do we really need to hear if we've already looked at the proposals and you have a recommendation too, right? At some point, I would think.
Yeah,
I mean-
I discussed with the consultants, no more than 10 minutes of any kind of presentation, and then up to 20 for discussion with the commission. And then we can put on the agenda for later after the public hearing, we can put on the, on the agenda, the discussion of where you want to do, kind of where you're headed in terms of an award recommendation.
Well, my thought is the public should come first. So if we have at 6:30, they should come at 6:30 and get out.
Mhm.
So they're not delayed. And the presenters who want to be hired come after that. That's my thought on it. But so we have them come at 7 and 7:30. I mean, I think if Ken can't be here, we should probably have it when he can be here.
Okay, I'll have to ask them if they can make it that late, if they're still free that late in the evening, if they're coming from a distance. So I will have to confirm. What we can do is, if I were on the 10th, or if there are any other dates in that week, we can do like a doodle poll or something, and I can kind of figure out if there's alternate dates that might work for folks as well. But yeah, basically I need sort of a amalgamation of everybody's availability, either before, or I will talk to the consultants about whether they're free for a later presentation.
I mean, I can do 6 o'clock is the earliest I could be, but 5:30 is just, I can't do 5:30.
Why don't we do 6 and tell them, listen, 10 minutes for the presentation, and I don't know that I'm gonna have, just speaking for myself, I don't think I'm gonna have a lot of questions for them after reading their proposal and listening to your recommendation. I don't know that I'd have a lot of questions for them, so I don't know what anybody else is thinking, but.
I would
I'm
agree
gonna
with
go
that.
Yeah.
constructive recommendation.
Okay, so why don't we do 6 o'clock? Ask them both to be here at 6, and we'll try to get it done in short order.
Is this
Okay,
gonna be in
that's very
person?
fast. That's, I think, realistic. I mean, we'll absolutely push for it, but 15 minutes a consultant and then starting up the regular meeting is very fast. Just,
No, I agree, but we can open up the meeting and recess it, right, to finish up the presentation.
we could, why don't I try to see if they're free, if everybody kind of holds that 6 o'clock time frame, I will try to see if they're free at 7 and 7:30 and see if we can be done with the bulk of the rest of the meeting and then have that timed for 7 and 7:30. Let me see if they're free.
Right.
Can
Nicole?
we book a meeting? Can we have one and then public opinion and then have the second, like maybe the one who's only available on that particular day? Great, you get the 7 o'clock spot.
Yeah, I'll work with the two and see if we hold a special meeting at 6 and do one later. I'll look at their overall availability and then I'll send something out to make sure that
Okay.
we're
I was
all
bouncing
set.
off of you saying those timeframes were tight, but I think everybody agrees we should see them on the same
Mhm.
day. I was trying to figure it out.
I'll have a chat with them and then perhaps Greg, I'll get back to you and we'll kind of finalize the time and get it out to the commission.
Okay.
If they kind of agrees to hold that 6 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay.
Everybody good with holding 6 o'clock for now? We'll get back to everybody on short notice then.
Just quick question, will that be in person or are we still gonna do Zoom or what's the status of that?
I think we're gonna try May 1st to do, we don't have a meeting on May 1st, but starting May 1st to go in person.
Okay.
You okay?
I got
Anything else? I'm sorry, what?
I got nervous that for some reason I thought it was a hearing tonight. It was gonna be in person. I didn't know if I was gonna make it.
Oh. No, not yet. So, anything else?
Not on the POCD, no.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
I'll move that we adjourn.
Okay, motion
Second.
made by Tim, seconded by Karen. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye,
Aye. Okay, see you guys in a couple weeks.
thank you.
Have a good night.
Right.
Welcome back, Tim.
Thanks.
Yes.